Hi everybody, Michael Marshall here. That wonderful time that we all love so much has come around again. It's time for another rant. And today's rant is regarding something that I'm sure everyone has wanted to rant against at one time or another. I'm talking about the NDIS. And more specifically, I'm talking about the NDIS and Apple products. Now, for those who might not be in Australia, who are looking at this and going, what's the NDIS? The NDIS is the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which theoretically enables people to get products that are specifically related to their disability that are usually quite pricey. The scheme will help you out. You get money from the government, and it certainly can alleviate some of the cost burdens. Now, it sounds good in theory, but in practice, it is an absolute disaster. And I'll tell you why it's an absolute disaster. If there is a certain product that you want, that you believe that you need, if it's above a certain threshold in terms of cost, you have to go through an assessment. So basically someone who might not even be disabled is going to look at the product that you want and put you through an assessment to decide whether you actually need this product and whether it is a reasonable and necessary cost for the product. Again, in theory, it sounds great. There are checks and balances to make sure that people aren't defrauding the system or anything else. Now, for some people, and I've been lucky in a lot of times with the NDIS, whereas many others have had an absolute nightmare experience, and I've been lucky in several aspects, but there's one glaring area that even I find extremely hard to take, and that's talking about Apple products. Now, for those like me who are totally blind and use an Apple Mac computer, accessibility comes in out of the box with VoiceOver. It's built in. You hit Command F5 or you triple tap the power button on a MacBook and VoiceOver will load up as soon as you turn it on, and off you go. The problem is that if you don't have a Mac and you wanted a Mac, because the screen reader is actually built into the system, the NDIS will not fund it for you. They won't even help you pay for it. They won't even give you half. They won't even help you subsidize, because they believe that the Mac is a mainstream product that is not disability specific. This, to me, is a terrible, terrible oversight. And we'll go through why in a moment. Now, a Mac brand new, like a MacBook Pro, for example, 15-inch, is about $2,900. It sounds like a bit of money when you look at it boldly like that. $2,900. Now, if you have a Windows computer, the NDIS will fund you for the JAWS screen reader, which is about $1,900 or above, especially when you're dealing with Windows Professional. And I should add at this point that JAWS isn't exactly different when it comes to professional or home versions. It's just one line of code that basically tells it what system you're using. There isn't a massive amount of difference, but that's a bit of a whinge for another time. Now, a Windows computer, a good one, I mean, you could pay $500 for one, and it really wouldn't be that good, to be brutally honest with you. It'd be very low on RAM, very low on memory. So $500 for that, for a really cheapo computer, and $1,900 for JAWS. That's still pretty pricey. You've had to go out and buy a Windows computer. You've had to have an assessment for JAWS, by the way, which sometimes they make you do to get the screen reader. Now, a Mac may be more expensive, and indeed Windows, a decent even medium-range Windows computer were more expensive. Now, the Mac may be more expensive, but you get the screen reader built in. So at least in my mind, you are getting better value for money. You're not having to go out and purchase two different products, which should be totally fine in relation to the scheme, but it's not. They have a real aversion. Maybe the Apple Watch, occasionally, if you are at falls risks, there have been cases of people getting them, similar with iPads on occasion, but again, the very basic models, nothing that you're going to be able to put really through its paces in that regard. Now, the new M1 Macs have been around for about a year, about a year now. And with the coming of OS 12, I think it is, Manta Ray, there's going to be a whole bunch of new accessibility tweaks, especially in regards to image descriptions and other things like that, Siri, dictation, everything else. But you need the M1 chip to get them. Now, this to my mind is a big thing because we as disabled people have the right to access images as best as we can, especially as AI and other things from companies start taking root. We have the right to access what is in an image just as good as anyone who is sighted. It is a right, it's not a privilege. We want to see what is in an image. And I'm using this as an example. Now, when Manta Ray comes out, my system, which is 2 years old, will run Manta Ray, but because I don't have the M1 silicon chip, I will be deprived certain accessibility features that, in my mind, is going to make my life much easier as a blind user. But to the NDIS, who have such an aversion to Apple products, the only way, as far as they're concerned, that I'd get it would be to have to fork out of my own pocket. Of course, if I had it, I would fork out of my own pocket and get it. But I believe that some assistance could be granted. If you traded in your old system, if you were able to come up with maybe half the cost yourself, I do not see a reason why the National Disability Insurance Scheme could not put in the rest and help you get a system with the latest accessibility features on it. It is a Mac, it is not Windows. Windows and JAWS combined can be just as expensive as a brand new MacBook. A MacBook Air is cheaper than the Pro. I personally do not want the MacBook Air because it's not as powerful enough for what I need. My voice acting, using Reaper, audio editing, putting together, movies for YouTube and all that kind of thing. But it's something that I feel very passionate about, and I've felt this way for a couple of years, and I've gone on and on about it to anyone who will listen. And I've heard all the arguments that a Mac is not disability specific, that a Mac can be brought by anybody. But the fact is that it is disability specific. If new accessibility features are being brought in with the new chipsets, with the new operating system, should we be deprived of those new accessibility features because the NDIS, do not see this as reasonable and necessary? Are we to be stuck and left behind on older systems that aren't as accessible? Are we to be left behind from our sighted peers and maybe anyone else who can afford an M1? Because they believe that we do not have the right to use our money that we have been allocated from the government to help make our lives easier, to help with the burden, the cost burden of being disabled. And being disabled is expensive. Whether you are blind, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you are on the spectrum, it is an expensive proposition. One, because they're niche markets. A lot of these products that are built for the disabled too, because companies will take them for everything they can, because they know they can, because there's not much choice. And again, that's a rant for another day. But I think this is extremely unfair. It is a glaring error that when Manta Ray arrives, I'm going to be on, and I say that I am luckier than most. My system's about 2 years old. I'm lucky. I was very lucky to get this system through a very helpful friend who helped me out. But I should not be prevented from getting more accessibility features that would make my life better and easier and allow me to communicate even more effectively with the world around me, because it is an Apple product and deemed not disability specific by the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It is a problem. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be looked at, because they talk about choice and control. They go on and on about the choice and control buzz phrase. But I leave with this question. After all that I have just told you in this preceding, talk, for want of a better word, does that speak of choice and control? Is that choice and control to you? Or is this choice and control in their rigid framework, what they consider to be choice and control? Are you really being granted choice and control in these matters? I think you know my answer to that. What's yours? Just think about this. Because I don't feel like I have choice and control over this particular situation. In fact, I feel quite powerless. And it's a word that I don't use lightly. But in this situation, I feel completely powerless. And it's not fair, it's not right, and in its way, it is a discriminatory practice. So think about this, listen to this carefully, and think about it. And if anyone wants to comment, go right ahead. Pros, cons, whatever. But these are my views. This is what I think. And I've said what's on my mind.